Welcome to Quality Time with MoreSteam. I am your host, Dan Swartout. Today, we are once again joined by Eric Olson. Eric is a professor of industrial technology at Cal Poly State University. He is also the lead of the Future of People at Work initiative and the director of Central Coast Lean. We talk a little bit more about Central Coast Lean in this episode, but to remind you of the Future of People at Work initiative, this is how they describe their purpose. We aim to improve how people work by bringing together different improvement methods and organizations. The Future of People at Work initiative represents an unprecedented collaboration among leading improvement-focused organizations dedicated to building better ways of working together. We had Eric as a guest on the show back on episode 35. In that episode, we talked about AI and how Eric uses AI to approach problem solving and learning. In this episode, we talk more about traditional lean topics. Eric's work as a professor at Cal Poly, his work in the lean community, teaching the Green Belt curriculum to his students. We started off our conversation by talking about generational differences in the workforce, something very central to the future of people at work.
And that actually sort of goes to another topic in the future people work domain is, next generation workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are the differences? So I'll tell you one observation in one of the discussions we had is one of the managers was lamenting, I just don't understand these young people. We offer them Lean Six Sigma or black belt training. We say we'll totally train you. We'll even embed you in a sister organization where you can do your projects and you can learn even more and become certified. And wouldn't that be great? And the response from this younger generation is, nope, I'm good. Right? I'm getting my salary. I'm taking it home. I go home Fridays and enjoy another part of my life. And these older managers, like myself and this person was talking, they're kind of scratching their heads. Man, when I was younger, I would have killed for that kind of opportunity, that kind of resume builder, right? Because it's either nope, I'm good, or well, that sounds like more work. How much more are you going to pay me if I do that? So we're helping you build your resume and your career, like, and I reflected on that a little bit, right? And the first response is okay, you know, you get that old guy, mentality. So what's wrong with this new generation, and you say, okay, it's character flaw on the part of them, but really, I think it's a difference in value systems, right? Because I'm also, and one of the things I do is I also teach 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Nice.
The Stephen Covey stuff. So,
Right.
but we do a workshop on that every year publicly, and I also teach a class in Cal Poly. And one of the fundamentals of that is you get to choose, right? That's the be proactive habit number one. You choose, and you understand that if you can choose, and what we recommend you do is you choose based on your values, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody has different values, but they're still able to make a choice, that person is saying, hey, I'm good. That's their choice. But, the old seek first to understand, then be understood, trying to understand, like, well, that's interesting. Why'd you pick that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, because I value time with kids, or I don't have the bandwidth to do this, or I'm interested in something else, and it becomes sort of a value decision on their part. So anyway, another topic about, how the Gen Zs, Gen Xs, and the Gens, are sort of moving through the workforce. That's something else that we got to be, you know, float into the mix, right?
Absolutely. I first want to ask, you're talking about even more activities and things that you teach. When do you find time to sleep? I'd like to know that. And then, so I'm going to lead in with that to Central Coast Lean. Can you tell me about that? What was the origin of Central Coast Lean? And what were you trying to achieve via Central Coast Lean?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much, the success on sleeping that's becoming more and more important for me. I highly recommend the midday nap.
Okay.
It's I think it's a thing. I would like to see that in the future of people at work.
I can get behind that, Eric.
Yeah, I know. I think I can sell that one. But yeah, Central Coast Lean, it actually has its origins when I came to here to work at Cal Poly. So I was in San Luis Obispo as a new professor in the College of Business here. Not very much of a lean scene here. This is a beautiful place, but highly agriculture based, Central Coast of California, 8 miles from the ocean. About 400 wineries, locally. So there was a lot of, well, what do you mean? What's lean? So
Hmm.
I started having some breakfast discussion groups, and that sort of rolled into, well, we should do some workshops. I started doing some Kaizen events at Cal Poly to kind of build out a community of practitioners here that were, experimenting, trying some things, trying to improve and get better. And then ultimately needed to formalize things a little bit. So Central Coast Lean started as a research project or sponsored program underneath the Orfalea College of Business.
Hmm.
Right. So it was, very much embedded in Cal Poly. And as a professor, I needed to do that because Central Coast Lean needed to like do workshops and our Lean Summit and need to charge people. So essentially it just becomes an account where money can flow in and out and we can do good things. The reason for the money, is kind of interesting. So Central Coast Lean as a professor, Cal Poly pays me, relatively well, not as good as the professors at Ohio State. I'm going to have to, be honest, but they also don't have the 400 wineries around them either. But
Or
the
the ocean.
or the ocean, so you got your trade offs. But the one thing I need is, or you want to have as a professor is sort of a side sort of pile of money that I don't have to crawl on my knees to the dean of the College of Business and say, hey, could I have enough money for a box of donuts for my friends for a morning coffee or something like that, right? So Central Coast Lean became, this little treasure chest of money that I could use to pay people to come out and be guest speakers or to front load the down payments for symposiums and conferences and stuff. And it was a little pile of money that I could control. So that was, one of the mechanisms that makes it work, but it's really about trying to increase and build a community of practitioners or people that are interested in improving and really doing the lean practice sort of thing. So we've kind of come down and we do a series of 4 workshops every year, kind of on a regular cycle, always the same month. We do an annual summit. There's the occasional, one of our organizations will want to do some improvement event or Kaizen, and we'll, invite some outside eyes and other people to come in and participate with them and trying to make things better. But that's as simple and as tough as it is. Right. So,
Eric, we've been talking for quite some time already, and I haven't even asked you because, like I said, you wear so many hats, you do so many things. I haven't even really asked you about your role as a professor. And you teach the Greenbelt body of knowledge to students at Cal Poly, right?
right. Right.
What's that like? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Again, so, coming into Cal Poly, they had all the standard business school classes, the standard operations management, and I started teaching that. But I soon figured out that, well, students need to know that, but let's teach about the future or the way things I think they should be going. And I said, okay, it needs to be a lean operations management, right? So I started teaching that. One of the things I found though, well, we still are on the quarter system. That's probably
Really?
back in your day at Ohio State. That was a quarter system, right?
Yeah, I was on the quarter system at Ohio State, and I thought Ohio State was one of the last holdouts. So I'm a little bit surprised to hear that Cal Poly is. a little bit excited too because I enjoyed the quarter system. Got to learn a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that feel similarly. I think, Cal Poly's part of the Cal State University system. So the Cal State University system now has like 22 different universities in the state of California. Being part of, 21 others on the semester system, and you're the only quarter one that's left. Pretty soon there's a lot of pressure, right? To get you to convert over. Yeah, so there started teaching lean, but figured out after a few years that my consistency. So we talk about standard work in lean, and my consistency from quarter to quarter was not super great. And so then I started thinking back to some of the stuff I was exposed to at Ohio State, and I knew about MoreSteam, offering the training and integrating that with some of the classes at Ohio State. And so I asked, well, can I do that at Cal Poly? And of course, Bill Hathaway and the folks there said, yeah, sure. We'd love to have you jump on board with this. So I started using the 80-hour Greenbelt training as sort of the core for my class. And what I decided once I had that core, we started doing a flipped classroom model, right? So I said, okay,
Hmm.
you're going to get consistent content from the 80 hours of training you're going to do on MoreSteam. When you come into class for me, 4 hours every week, 2 2-hour sessions, we're going to do the fun stuff, right? On Monday, we're going to watch some different movies that will sort of expose you to some of the concepts. On Wednesday, we'll kind of talk about certainly what happened on MoreSteam this week or the stuff that you learned, but we'll also Zoom in my lean buddies from around the country, come talk to the students. We'll kind of do some coaching on the project. So every student in my class has to do an individual, what we call a mini project, essentially apply 10 lean tools, two for each phase of the DMAIC project to some process. We fixed a lot of sorority voting systems, a lot of, local restaurants have really improved, because of the stuff that some of my students have done. Yeah, and then some sort of application or some sort of doing sort of practice, in the midst of the session. But we've gotten it now so that I was the only professor doing this for a while. We're now up to we got four different professors teaching this class, uh, either adjunct lecturers or myself as a full professor. But we now have about like 400 students a year going
Wow.
through getting greenbelt training. It's required for my industrial technology and packaging students. It's a one of five options in like a suite of technology management courses that all business students can take. And so those become sort of the majority of the flow through. But it's been interesting, exciting. I try to use lean to teach lean. So every class starts out with a huddle where we talk about what went right, what went wrong, what are the questions, and then those various segments that I talked about. We integrate, and we are always looking for the students to make suggestions on what can we improve. It's a little embarrassing. One of the huddle elements is a sort of a version of a check sheet process, right?
Hmm.
Was noticed something that has gone wrong, since the last time we met in the class, like, oh, my homework was graded incorrectly, or the slides weren't posted when you said they were, or the video is going wonky on the reception. So we start tracking all those problems, and we do little root cause, quick stand up problem solving sessions on that to show students, well, if you're in a company and you're trying to deliver some value like learning to students, there are impediments to that flow and issues and problems. How can we make it better and how can we improve it? So they get to practice it, in the context of sort of, running the class, which is essentially we teach it as, this is a service operation, right?
Hmm.
You guys are customers also participating in the process. How would this work? What would this look like? So it's interesting.
That is really cool. And to go from 20 years to having almost no lean presence in your immediate geographical area to having Central Coast Lean to having 400 students a year, that's got to be pretty fulfilling. You got to feel pretty good about that, I guess.
You would think, right? But I'm still willing to get to parts, where I sit back and say, "Wow, geez, I did a great job. I'm just going to kick back and relax now at this point." But I, you know, you it and it's like when you remodel your own home or you do some sort of work. People come in, they ooh and they ah, and they say they're amazed, but where all the errors are and the little like things you had to patch and the things you wish you could have done better, right? So there's probably tend to occupy my mind more often than the satisfied thing. But I'm trying to get there. That's a aspirational aspect for me. Yeah.
Eric, you are one of the foremost experts in lean. I cannot let you go without asking some practical questions. For a small team, for example, for a small team just starting out, what's one low risk experiment they could try this week to experience PDCA in action?
So one of the things I saw always advocate is, a questioning and approach, right? So
Uh-huh.
if I said, okay, I'm going to just sort of sit back and try to make a bigger thing. I think I was just sort of thinking about this morning, and this isn't necessarily lean, but I was thinking about, the book, The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt.
I
You
do not know that book.
Okay, well, it's a book. Goal. It's about the theory of constraints, and they talk about bottlenecks as being the thing that controls the total output for the system. But they've got a sort of a similar to lean or to a PDCA of an improvement process cycle that comes back when the cycle comes back. It says, okay, now go back to step one. And I show this movie to my students every quarter, so it goes through your mind. There's a line in there where it says, okay, now that we solved the original bottleneck and we improved the throughput for our organization, we have to go back to the beginning and we have to reevaluate all the decisions we previously made. And I'll go to the future and then I'll come back to this team question.
Okay.
So the question for the future is, we made all the decisions on how we're currently running, without AI, without virtual teams, without all this sort of stuff. Are those still the right decisions that we made on how we organized and how we do things, right? We got to go back and we got to reevaluate, because what was like the greatest decision back then might not be the greatest decision now that there's these new capabilities or things going on. So I think for a team, maybe just a simple question of always being to say this, like, well, why do we do it this way?
Right.
Right? Why do we do it this way? Right? Okay, we're doing this. Well, why? And if you can get teams having those sorts of conversations around the why question, I think that starts and you try to leverage into generating natural curiosity and building on people's maybe, boy, yeah, that's right, why do we do it that way, let's try it different, or let's try something else, and that kind of leads into the experimentation approach. So recommendation for teams, just start out with why.
You made me think just a little bit with your answer just now about the idea of institutional knowledge, because a lot of people hear, why do we do things this way? Because we always have. And if you don't have that institutional knowledge, you don't have the actual explanation other than that's just the way we do it.
Yeah. And so many of those things are, processes for companies that aren't lean, that don't have like the discipline, or, in lean speak, the standard work to kind of, continue to do these things. Processes just develop organically over time, and
Mhm.
you don't know why. And oh, oh, so I don't, another famous video. Have you ever seen the Toast Kaizen video?
I have not. I
Yeah,
need
you
to
got.
see all these things.
Well,
You
I'm going to send you a list. I'll send you a list of videos.
you're opening a whole new world to me, Eric.
So one of the things is it's about a guy trying to make toast. Actually, sort of Bruce Hamilton's a buddy of mine and sort of the star in the video. He runs the Greater Boston Manufacturing Partners organization. It's another one of the organizations that is associated or partnering in the future of people at work. He kind of goes through this little exercise of making toast and draws out all the waste or the seven wastes, in the toast making process. But there's a little piece of it in there where he's searching through the refrigerator for butter. And then when he's slicing through the butter, it's hard as a rock because it's in the refrigerator, right? And we start, talking to students about, well, there's two types of people. There's butter in the refrigerator people, and there's butter on the counter people. And probably about 30% or so of people are butter on the counter people, right? I'm always a butter on the refrigerator person. Well,
Me
why?
too.
Yeah. And it's like, well, where'd you learn that? Well, it's why my mom did it that way. Well, why'd your mom do it that way? And so much of that stuff is driven by just the way it's always been done, right? And trying to get the students say, like, if you ask why on the butter, well, because of bacteria. Well, it's actually very counter stable. And the pioneers didn't have refrigerators, going across the thing. And, it's an interesting sort of dynamic of it. We do things because of, the way we've been trained or the way it's always been, just like you said, right?
I am a butter in the refrigerator with a couple seconds in the microwave person. That's my approach.
Well, see, that's how you get over that wasted effort on slicing through the butter that's too hard, right?
My conversation with Eric reminds me of that song from the 60s. You know that one. I won't sing it. I won't do that to you, but you know the lyrics. Well, I like bread and butter. I like toast and jam. Starting this short break now, we'll be back, my friends. MoreSteam's enterprise process improvement platform includes the tools, training, and software you need to transform your organization into a problem-solving powerhouse. Join the ranks of Fortune 500 companies that trust MoreSteam for their enterprise process improvement. Visit moresteam.com to learn more. And now back to my conversation with Eric Olson. Eric, I want to talk a little bit about some of your research. Your research suggests financial performance differs between lean and non-lean organizations. I believe that is what your dissertation was about, correct?
Right, that's correct. Yeah.
And
Well,
Peter
yeah,
Ward,
you read it cover to cover, I suppose. Is that what you're going to tell me? You're like the other person that read it?
it's right after the goal. The
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing's right after the goal.
Okay, okay.
So your research suggests this financial performance differs between lean and non-lean organizations, firms, companies. How should leaders translate that evidence into boardroom conversations? How do you make that case?
So I did, I did the dissertation. I had to, Peter Ward helped coach me into that direction, doing that thing. I wanted to do something, much more nebulous and harder. But he said financial performance, lean versus non-lean, is pretty straightforward. You can go ahead and do that. The one thing that did stand out in my dissertation data was the difference between lean and non-lean companies was really just one thing. And it was the practice of engaging people in problem solving, right? So if you engage them in problem solving, you had better financial performance. And I forget exactly sort of what the level was, but it's really that long-term look at building the capability of your people to solve not only the problems you have now, but the stuff that you're going to develop in the future. So as your company grows or expands and the opportunities present themselves, then you have the bandwidth or the wherewithal to take advantage of them and to make those things happen. Yeah, I don't know. To be honest with you, Dan, I don't know as I've ever been really good at talking to the C-suite
Mhm.
about those things. We've actually, this I sound like a broker. We actually have some people involved in the Future People at Work. One of the initiatives that we're taking on, we call it the non-lean CEO problem, right?
Mhm.
Because you're talking about probably in our view, maybe I don't know, 7 to 10% of the CEOs out there, know something about Lean and Six Sigma and are, trying to do some things. The ones that are doing it well, or maybe even a little bit less. So you get this huge pool of non-lean CEOs that need to sort of hear the message to know that this stuff needs to be part of the mix or the part of the things that they do to improve their organizational performance. And how do you access them? How do you message them? How do you present the data so that they say, hey, yeah, we need to have a play, or we need to have a stronger play in this area?
That is an excellent reason to attend the next Future of People at Work seminar, which will be when, Eric?
Well, let's see. So
Most recent one just happened.
yeah. So we just wrapped up one at the end of June. So we're kind of looking forward and deciding, okay, it's a little bit okay. Now we did our first. Well, so we've now had two symposiums. One was in Detroit in 2024. We just were in Salt Lake City in 2025. We're looking forward to 2026, trying to decide, okay, well, what does this want to look like? And trying to leverage what we learned about what worked, what was successful, what drew the right attendance, and how we're going to apply it sort of going forward. So I'm going to have to say it's a stay tuned.
Let's come to Columbus. Let's book the horseshoe. Let's do it.
Well, that if we can fill the horseshoe, we will be there. But it might
Eric,
it might be a little more select kind of event. I don't know. So we'll see.
we will see, Eric. We will see. Imagine 100,000 people at Ohio Stadium for the next Future of People at Work symposium. Thanks so much for joining us again, Eric. And thank you for listening to Quality Time with MoreSteam. You can email the show at qualitytime@moresteam.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. Also, please go ahead and visit our website, moresteam.com, to learn about the software and tools that can help you solve problems, eliminate waste, and do things better. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more Quality Time with MoreSteam. Thanks again.